Welcome to the Encourager Podcast with me, Rebekah Scott. I believe that if you desire an active, impactful role in your children's lives while simultaneously wanting to provide an income for your family, then being a mompreneur is exactly what you need to work at home. The Encourager Podcast is my way of inspiring and motivating you with insightful knowledge, tips, and advice from myself and other successful working women who want to put their families first. Grab a pen or get your brain ready to take notes for this week's powerful episode. Hello! Today I am going to talk to you about how to get your spouse or your partner on board with your new business venture or your entrepreneur venture or whatever your new venture is. I'm going to give a couple of tips of how to get your partner to be on board and maybe not as excited as you, because that's kind of hard to do, but at least be supportive of what you're trying to do. It's a lonely road of entrepreneurism, believe me, but it doesn't have to be if you do the right things to include your partner and to include your family in your plans. So, first step is you need to explain your passion. Tell your partner why you are starting this. Explaining your passion is really telling them your why factor. Why are you starting this? Why are you doing this? Maybe you're not starting. Maybe you're in the middle of it. Why are you doing this? So for me, I was really passionate about wanting to stay at home and raise my children. I didn't want to have to take them to a daycare. I wanted to see every single first. I wanted to raise them right next to me. So my why factor was to be able to stay at home. I wanted freedom. I wanted to be able to take them things. I wanted freedom to do what I wanted. I didn't want to have to work 8 to 5. I wanted freedom. I wanted to be creative because it was just oozing out of me. So I had a lot of different whys, but my main why was I wanted to stay at home and raise the children at home next to me, and I wanted freedom. So those were my two main whys. And then also what fueled my passion then to start the business and continue it. What is your why factor or your passion? So figure that out first and explain that to your partner. Then explain your goals. This also forces us to know what our goals is. So you're like, hey, I'm going to start a new business. I'm going to need to have some goals. So make a goal for the first month and where you're going to be after a year and where you're going to be in 18 months. It doesn't have to be way out. That is beneficial. But if it's something new and that you're just really passionate about, set some just regular goals, if regular and goal belongs in the same sentence. But set some attainable goals so that your partner is aware of what your goals are and will encourage you and support you in them. Set goals for the first month and then set goals for the first year, and also explain what your vision is for this new ordeal or this new company or this new business, and explain what your mission is. Then your partner and you and your family are on the same page when you understand what that is. Plus, it forces you to know your goals. Be truthful about your goals. Don't say, I'm going to make $3,000 in the first month if you don't have anything to back that up. Like, set your goal and then do the work to back it up. I read something interesting, or probably listened to something interesting, that said the goal is, the target is never the problem. It's the work to the target. That's the problem. So for me, that's like if I say I'm going to sell 50 bags, the target is not a problem. But the work involved to sell those 50 bags needs to equate selling the 50 bags. So set your goals and then know that the target is not the problem. What work are you going to do to meet that goal? And make sure that your partner knows what that means. Another thing, at least it is a stereotype, because I know a lot of women love numbers too. I love numbers. I'm a unicorn. I love creative things, but I also love the numbers because they're black and white. They don't lie. But men love numbers as well, and they love the analytics. And as women, we tend to think emotionally, passionately. And so if we can explain to our partner our number goals and the analytics behind how we're going to get there and those things, it might help ease their mind a little bit too. So, try to think not as emotional and passionate, but also think on the business end of things with the numbers, the strategy, the analytics, how you're going to get there. Talk those numbers over with your partner. Talk over your revenue streams. How is the revenue going to come in with this business? How much are you going to need to spend to start the business? Where's your cap? Like in the first month to reach that goal, I won't spend over this. I'm going to be able to make this much by only spending this much. Set those goals out and explain them to your partner. Another step is you need to ask for permission. This one is pretty big, and it will make you be vulnerable and it'll make you be humble, but it's something that you must do. I don't really like the saying where they say it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. That is very true. But I feel like if you have integrity, you will always ask for permission first, because it allows you to be vulnerable and to be humble and say, I would like to start this. Are you on board with me? Here's what I'm going to do to get it. Be humble. Be grateful that you're in a position where you could start something and that you're excited about something, but ask for permission. It'll go much smoother than if you ask for forgiveness after you've started it and spent some money. Create a deadline for your success. Like we just talked about with the goals, what will be a step of success for you? Define what success will be after the first month, so that if you reach it, you can also prove that to your partner. Listen, I did. I said this was going to be a success and I met it. And if not, what could you do to make it better the next month? By setting these success goals, you will know that if you haven't met it in 6 months or 1 year, 18 months, you can talk with your partner about it, and hopefully they can be nice about it, but say, we got to reevaluate if this is still worth sustaining, or if we can shift gears or shift perspectives on it. What can you change or make better or keep the momentum going? But when you set these success goals, then you can both measure how you're doing on that and how the business is going. You also need to talk boundaries and priorities. This one is huge because us entrepreneurs, we are roller coasters. I always laugh because God knew exactly why Nick needed to be in my life, because I'm a roller coaster. I'm really, really high, and then I may be really low. Thankfully, I'm more high than I am low, but Nick is like as even keel as it gets. So when I'm really high, he's even keel, but when I'm really low, he's even keel. So it measures out. So because we are such roller coasters and passionate people or creative people, we need to talk boundaries and priorities with our partners so that they also can keep us accountable to the success or what our passion is. So talk about, when will you work? What are the hours you want to work? You can always be flexible on this, but set some initial hours so that you're both on the same page. How many hours do you want to work? Do you want to work 10 hours in the first month every single day? Do you want to work 2 hours in the first month every single day? What days will you work? Maybe you're going to, this is where the boundary part comes in. Like, I will not work on Sundays. That's going to be your thing. Or I will not work on Saturdays when the children are home. What are going to be your boundaries for when you work and when you don't work? And what are going to be your priorities? Like right now in this month when I'm starting this business, I'm going to have to put a high priority on this. So I may not be able to go to every basketball game, or I may not be able to do bedtime 5 nights a week. I can do it 3 nights, but not 5 nights. Like, talk about it. Talking about it will free up a lot of pain and ache and heartache later, because you have talked about it and you told your partner what it is going to demand for that first month to reach that goal, or that first 18 months, what that may mean. Talk about the priority, how you're going to prioritize it, and then talk about the boundaries. Where are you going to work? How many hours are you going to work? How are you going to work? The thing about telling them where you're going to work is very important, because if you say, I'm just going to work in this corner, that's wonderful. But if you say, well, I'm just, I'm going to work on the kitchen counter sometimes, and then sometimes I'll spread out into here, believe me, at one point that will get really annoying to your partner. So you got to be honest right away about, in the first month I might be able to contain it in the home office, but it might spread out into the basement. Are you okay with that? That's that asking for permission. Yeah, sure, I think I might be okay with that. And then they might get on board with, maybe I could build you this in the garage, which is what personally happened for me. I did not talk about how many hours it would work, and it caused a lot of pain, because he would be like, well, why are you working tonight? And I would say, well, because I was doing this with the kids today, so now I got to work tonight. But then that wasn't prioritizing him. So when we sat down and talked about, okay, let's create some boundaries around my work hours, oh my goodness, it saved us so much heartache. So for us, I stop at 6 in the evening. We do supper, do our night stuff, homework, family stuff. 8 o'clock, we do bedtime by 8:30. At 8:30, I go back into the office and I usually do administrative stuff, emails, prepping for the next day, whatever that may be. And then usually by 9 o'clock, then I can spend some time with Nicholas. But sometimes, and he knows this because we've talked about this, during harvest season for me, which is like October to December, when everybody wants their Christmas purse, I work later, and he knows that. And I also work in the summer when we get really busy with the art shows. He knows that Wednesday nights I work late. That is just my policy in the summer so that I can keep up. I work late on Wednesday nights and he goes roping. So it totally works out. We both asked for permission. We talked about it and we created that boundary. So talk about your boundaries and talk about your priorities. Also, another important boundary is, are you going to need an extra phone for the business? And like, when are you going to take business calls? Maybe you're going to agree not to take business calls past 9 p.m. or 6 p.m. What is going to be your rule? Because your partner will probably be rolling their eyes if you're accepting calls way late at night, but maybe that's your job. Maybe you're a computer tech at home and that's when the phone calls are made. But talk with your partner about when you will and won't accept phone calls. When will you be texting? Will you text when he's driving in the car, business stuff, or check email in the car? I'm not shaming you or judging you. You just need to tell your partner what that is going to be for you. What are going to be your boundaries? When are you going to text? I went to a show and this gal was really smart. She said no iPads on the couch. Because at night she would, sit on the couch next to her husband. So she was spending time with him, but she was on her iPad. And he was really frustrated with that. So then he started to get on his iPad. And they were both just sitting on the couch, but not really being together. So create those boundaries. Maybe it's no technology in the bedroom, no technology on your couch, whatever it may be, create that boundary. And maybe also like no weekend work, like the machines go off or whatever that may be. Just be very clear on what your boundaries are and then also flexible. That week did not work out. I need to have Wednesdays to work late, or I am squeezing in time before church on Sunday to get my work done. I don't really want to do that anymore because I need a day of rest. So I would like to make up that hour and a half on Saturday nights. Would you do bedtime on Saturday nights so I can do that hour and a half? Awesome. Sure. That sounds great. That's exactly what Nick and I had to do. Because I was getting up to work before church and just do some prep, but I didn't want to do that either. I needed a day of rest. So we talked about Saturday nights and it works out great. Another thing you need to do is you need to look outside of your partner for support. Because if you're anything like most of us, you're going to be so excited and you're going to be talking nonstop about it and how you're so excited and you're creating this business and blah, 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 blah. And it's great. But there's only so much I think a partner's threshold will take where they're like, listen, you have got to find somebody else to talk to about this. And it's really true. And it's not a mean thing. It's just that they can only listen to it so much before they're like, I don't have anything else to say. So find some outside support, whether that is your mom, your sisters, your brothers. For me, it was other business owners. My mom and my twin sister are extra supportive, and I can always talk to them about business, and they're always very encouraging. But it's also good to have other business owners that are like-minded, that are on the same trail as you, that are as passionate and has as many adrenaline rushes as you do. Talk to some others, find outside support from your partner. Also, it's important to kind of control if you can. I don't want you to not be authentic, but sometimes the highs and lows of forming your own business or being an entrepreneur can be really high and the lows can be really low. So it's probably not ideal to call your spouse in the middle of a high or in the middle of a low. Spend some time by yourself, close in, think a scenario, play best case scenario before you call your spouse or your partner to explain things. Because you may just overwhelm them, and then 5 minutes later you'd be like, oh, never mind, it wasn't that overwhelming. And, it's kind of like when my mom was telling me, I was telling her about this podcast, and she goes, yeah, I remember in high school, my twin sister and I would go, and that morning we were having problems or whatever, and we're like, oh my gosh. So she would sit and worry about it all day and think about, oh, I wonder how that went. And we'd get home from school or from practice, and she'd go, oh, how was today? I thought about it all day. And I was like, what? I don't even remember. So it's kind of like that in business too, where all of a sudden it's this great high or this great low and you're really worried about it. And then 6 hours later, you're like, oh, it was totally fine. I totally smoothed it out. So just be careful with your highs and your lows and explaining them to your partner, that you don't overwhelm them too much or make them worry. Another brilliant thing that you need to do, and this happened so clearly for me, is that you need to support your partner's passion. We work on a farm. Nick works on a family farm. And it dawned on me that I've got to do what I love for 12 years now. I love what I do. I'm super passionate about it. Obviously, I love it. But it dawned on me, maybe he should be able to do what he's passionate about. And who am I to limit that? He took a chance on me. I've got to take a chance on him. He still gets obviously a steady paycheck from our farm, but I said, you know what? What do you enjoy doing? What do you love doing? And so I do some speaking events, and I talk about passion and how to find what your passion is. And so I did basically my speech on him one night. I was like, okay, what were you doing at the age of 4? And he said, well, my mom says, and I remember, I spent a lot of time in the dirt. I dug in that sandbox for hours on end. And he worked for a construction company when we first got married. And I said, so what do you want to do with that? What would be like, if you had no limitations, what would you do? And he said, I would own an excavator. And so therefore I said, then we're going to own an excavator. And we worked it out, and we own an excavator, and he has it as a side job. And I tell you what, when he walks in that door, he is such a different man and so happy when he is in his excavator, because that's his passion. And your spouse's or your partner's passion may not be something that's a business. It may just be a hobby. But find out if they're going to support your passion. You got to find out what theirs is and support them with craziness. Like, oh, that's awesome. Let's pursue it. Or let's just try it once a month. Let's make it work so that you can pursue your passions. Believe me, once they understand what it's like to pursue their passion and maybe try to make money off it, or if it's a hobby, it would be something different, they will understand why you have so much passion for what you want to do. Another thing that's very important, and I've mentioned it in podcasts before, is that you always need to ask your partner, how can I help you? It tells them that you are prioritizing them as well. The word Eve in the Bible means helpmate. So we are their helpers. How can you help them? Then, usually, the favor is returned and they say, how can I help you today? So it's a win-win. Remember that in this journey of entrepreneurism, forming your own businesses, working at home, that you need to also create balance. And sometimes you have to balance and then rebalance and then rebalance. But having your partner on board with you is so extremely important to hold us accountable to that balance, because you know they're the first ones to know when you are absolutely freaking out or working too much or way too overwhelmed or slacking. They are also the ones to remind you what you started, what your goals were, what your boundaries were. You know that they are the good ones to remind you of those. Hopefully they remind you gently, and sometimes not so gently if they're really frustrated, but they are a very good gauge for how we are operating our lives. So be grateful for them. I am so grateful for Nick and what he puts up with and all of my roller coasters, and how much he encourages me and says that he's proud of me. And I'm also very glad for my family that encourages me and supports me when I need to just freak out to them before I tell Nicholas what happened or whatever it may be. I don't keep anything from him, but sometimes in the highs and the lows, you got to get it off your chest first with a woman and then explain it analytically to your husband. Sometimes it works like that. But I'm just so grateful. So make sure that you create balance, creating these boundaries, these priorities, and you're grateful for your partner and how they can help you. A quick little story about how Nicholas and I are paired together so magically. I drive 180 round miles to a trunk show. You know, I went to this gal's house. I set up my purses. I went to sell. I sold one purse. So I drove 90 miles there. I sold one purse, and I drove 90 miles back home. And the host had the nerve in the show to say if she could get a discount on the purse when nobody from her show bought from me. It was crazy disappointing. But I had enough time on the way home, 90 miles, to think about it, reflect on it, say what I was grateful for, that I came home thinking, all right, you know what? I only sold one purse. I drove 180 miles, but I just talked to 6 women that I hope won't forget me, because I'm not going to forget them, and maybe someday they'll buy. So I walk in the door. I tell Nicholas, hey, I'm home. And he says, great. How was the show? This was probably 7 years ago. How was the show? I say, oh, I sold one purse. And he looks at me and he goes, one purse and you drove how far? And I'm like, oh, it's okay. I met all these wonderful women and they're all going to buy eventually. I just know it. And he is a good balance, because he goes, honey, no. We're not doing this again. We've got to create some kind of system where you can guarantee the women are going to be there. So that wasn't possible. You know, you still can't really do that in direct sales. But his take on it really was smart. And so then I started creating some boundaries with trunk shows about gearing. How many people are coming? If I am going to drive that far, how many women are you expecting? So that I wouldn't be super crushed and frankly stupid or ignorant about traveling that far to only sell one bag. Now, if I was on my own, I would keep doing that. But thankfully, Nick had, in a gentle way, a way of telling me, listen, this will not happen again. Let's figure out how this won't happen again. So I'm really grateful for him. And I'm sure you are grateful for your partners. It may be frustrating at first to get them on board, but follow these steps and that should help greatly. Or maybe you can get them to listen to this on a car trip where you're stuck together. Love it. Until next time on The Encourager. And this is my keeping it real moment. The girls were playing together Barbies and somebody started screaming over somebody else. And I was nursing Pixon in the chair, so I was close by, and I could hear Rosalind whisper something to Iverson, kind of in a snotty tone. And I said, girls, what are you saying? And Ivy screams out pretty much instantly. She says, Mom, Rosalind said a naughty word. I'm like, ooh, a naughty word at 2. I cannot think what this naughty word is, and I don't think we're swearing in the house, but whatever. I say, okay, Rosalind, are you going to tell me what the naughty word is? And she looks sheepishly at me with her hands between her inner thighs. She's not going to tell me. So I say, okay, Iverson, you can whisper it to me, and then we'll talk about it. And Iverson comes and whispers in my ear, she said caterpillar. So there's my keeping it real moment. Caterpillar is a swear word at our house. What's yours? Thanks. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you have not done so, please subscribe to the show so that the latest episode will always be conveniently available on your device. You can also find the show notes on my website at shoprsd.com. That's shop with R as in Rebekah, S as in Scott, and D as in designs.com. The Encourager podcast tab is at the bottom of my website, which holds some great resources, like my recommended book page, how to rate and review my podcast, and reflection guides that correspond with each episode. Do your homework. Each review and rating is so valuable to us. I sincerely hope you feel encouraged and empowered to tackle anything that comes your way this week. Remember to be grateful, humble, and kind, then joy will come ushering in. Until next time on The Encourager.